'Tis I. Hey everyone, glad to see you back, glad to see you looking fresh. So, much like I promised in my last video, these are my 5 games that I would recommend people playing before it becomes really hard to find these games in the future because the 3DS eShop is coming to a close, unfortunately. None of these games are very popular. Some of them are from popular franchises, and some of them have gone on to develop a cult following, but none of these games really got to shine here in the West specifically as much as I feel like they should have. And these games, I feel like, all will become very hard to come by in the future times. So get them on the eShop or buy them physically now before they become really, really hard games to find later on. Because none of these, so far anyway, have had extra editions or new releases on extra consoles. They're all 3DS exclusives at the moment. So without further ado, let's just jump into one of these. And let's start off with a Nintendo release. Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, or Valencia, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, is the newest Fire Emblem game on the 3DS. It came out very late in the 3DS's life cycle, which is why it's become so, overcasted and not really talked about as much. It's a remake of an older Fire Emblem game from way back, one that we never got, so it has a new cast of characters that you probably have never heard of if you haven't played this game before. It's great Fire Emblem stuff. It has modern Fire Emblem elements while also keeping an old school feel to it. It doesn't have every new development that the 3DS Fire Emblem games brought to the franchise. However, it has a lot of new ideas and older ideas that we're able to bring over. Such as dungeon crawling is an idea that hasn't been in modern Fire Emblem and is in this game, and it's a really cool additional element to it. There is a ton to love about this game, a ton of characters to fall in love with, and a great story that I really enjoyed playing through. And I really hope we get more Fire Emblem Echoes games in the future, and we can bring old Fire Emblem games to new hardware and new eyes. But we have to support this game first, because it's the first in that line. So, if you haven't yet, and you love Fire Emblem, play it. Not many people did. Let's stick with Nintendo-developed and released games. Ever Oasis. This is another very late game in the 3DS's life cycle, and one that was completely overshadowed. Hardly anyone ever talks about this. It's a very good dungeon crawler. Much like our last game, it does have dungeon crawling elements, but it also has exploration elements, and it also has town building elements. It's a really, really interesting combo of ideas that just work, and this is a game that deserves more love. It honestly deserves an entire franchise, a sequel, a remaster, whatever, on the Switch, but I feel like, unfortunately, it just won't get it because this game came out to deaf ears because the Switch has already been out at the time. So this game was destined to fail because of that. Because unfortunately, as soon as the Switch came out, the 3DS and the hype around it promptly died. So this game is a new IP from Nintendo, which is an idea we keep asking for. We want new stuff from Nintendo. We want new franchises, and then they give us one, and we don't support it. So please play Ever Oasis. It is a great game. It is so much fun. It's a great little adventure. This franchise deserves more love. So if we make enough noise about this, maybe we'll get to see a franchise build upon this one day. So I'm going to go with a bit of a weird pick here in the middle because the first two are kind of grouped together because they're published by the same people. And the last two are grouped together because they're published by the same people. So this one is technically published by Nintendo, but it's not a Nintendo-developed game at all. So it is Lego City Undercover: The Chase Begins. So this is a prequel to Lego City Undercover on the Wii U at the time, and now has come to many consoles. A game that is very good. A great, great Lego game. A great game, period. Honestly, if you would have asked me back in 2013, hey Dan, what's the best game ever made? Lego City Undercover would have uttered from my mouth at some point, right? I would have had other games first, but Lego City Undercover would have come from me around that time. I do not hold the same fondness as I once did for the game. However, I still think it is an excellent game, one worth playing in its own right, but it has a prequel on the 3DS, and it keeps the same open world. Obviously, it's not as good. Obviously, it doesn't have the same power as the Wii U did, so the open world is a bit more janky, and it's a very foggy day in Lego City, let's say it like that, but it is really good for what it is. Very interesting. And just thinking back, I haven't like played it fully through in a while. It's been almost a decade since I've played this game, and I still look back on it fondly. It is still a hidden gem in the 3DS's library, and it's one that is worth playing before it is lost, because I don't think that this will be ported to anything else, much like its better brother did. But this game is worth your time and worth exploring at least one time through. And at least nothing else, you get a good laugh. The game is quite funny. The world is fun to explore. The characters are interesting. So buy both Chase Begins and Lego City Undercover whatever way you can. Both games are absolutely worth your time. Now, going off that, like I said, the first couple were grouped together and the last couple were grouped together. The last two are both games from Level 5 Games, a game company that I adore and you've heard me talk before. And one of them sits right behind me in Yokai Watch, or I should say the entire series of Western-released Yokai Watch games. So Yokai Watch 2, all three versions are kind of the same version. They did a Pokemon thing where they released two versions and then one better version. Those all exist. And Yokai Watch 3, all great games. They build on each other as they go along. All games that are worth your time, and a franchise that honestly came out to a lot of hype because it was very big in Japan. It came out swinging here in the West, and a lot of people just kind of passed it over. It's very Pokemon-esque. It's a monster collecting game. Battle elements are very different from Pokemon, and a lot of people don't like the battle elements, and that's okay. I think it's worth giving a shot because the world it builds is a lot of fun. The exploration is a lot of fun. The characters are a lot of fun, and the monsters collecting is a lot of fun. Collecting all these weird, creepy, interesting or cute yokais and building a team around it, and sometimes you get that really rare yokai that you weren't expecting, or just keeping around that weak little guy that becomes super strong and builds into one of your best members on your team. It's a lot of fun, right? It has the same Pokemon quality, so if you're looking for something like Pokemon but something a little different, Yokai is the place to go. Any of them are a good place to start, and I don't think they connect story-wise if I remember correctly, but I would say start with the first one, the second one, third one. There you go. These games are already kind of hard to come by, so buying them digitally is a very valid way to go on here. And fortunately, we won't be able to see that soon. And again, if we see an uptick, we're both supporting Level 5 Games, which is a company I love, and maybe we'll get to see Yokai Watch 4 finally come to the Switch. And finally, to wrap us up here today, the biggest and my favorite of these 5 games, Fantasy Life, developed by Level 5 Games, published by Level 5 Games, is a huge RPG on the 3DS. One of, if not the best games Level 5 has ever created. It is a game where, yes, there's a classic RPG story in there, and you can play as a warrior, working your way through missions and slaying monsters. Or maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to be a fisherman, and you can do fishing missions, and you can work your way up to be the best angler in the world. Or maybe you say, I don't want to be a fisherman either, and you want to be a wizard, or you want to be a lumberjack. There is many different jobs. I think there's 12 jobs to pick from in this game, all with their own storylines, all with enough meat on their bones to be their own fully fledged game, and you can switch at any time to play any other storyline you want. So say you're working part through the wizard campaign, and you're like, I don't like this. I want to play something ridiculous. Bada bing, bada boom, there you are, you're a fisherman now. You just get to be a fisherman, and that's fantastic. And you get to do a whole fishing storyline, and then you're like, I'm sick of being a fisherman. And then you switch it up. You do something else. If you want to be a chef, you go be a chef. There's so many things to do in Fantasy Life and so many things to see. The game is absolutely massive. Hundreds of hours worth of content. One of the best games on the 3DS, and a game that completely got looked over. And Level 5 deserves more love and respect. If I can convince you guys to do any one thing, it is to support Level 5 Games here. Go play Fantasy Life, a game again. This deserves a sequel. I would love a sequel to Fantasy Life on the Switch. Switch to whatever. The amount of different ways they could play with this, the amount of jobs they could create, and the world they could make. It's so exciting to think about. And we need more games like this. So many interesting ideas, and a game that I love so much. And that is my final recommendation to you all. Fire Emblem Echoes, Ever Oasis, Lego City Undercover, The Chase Begins, Yokai Watch, the entire series, and Fantasy Life. 5 great games to go and try. Buy them digitally, buy them physically, before they're gone. Have a ball. Let me know which of these are your favorite if you played them. If you haven't, please check them out and let me know your thoughts after you have. And that'll about do it for me. Thank you so very much for watching. As always, like this if you like this, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you at some point.